So in this tutorial, what I'd like to do is to encourage you really to start thinking like a game designer in the virtual world. Um, and one of those things that game designers do is that they're aware of is that they don't need to have literal translations of concepts from the real world to the virtual or to the game space. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a dice, or a die, I should say, of course, for the singular, a dice, that I want to be able to roll to give me a random number between 1 and 6. And I could use that for various different ways in the virtual world to make things more fun. For instance, to progress through a quiz or something like that. So, again, just be aware here that I could try and make a die that fits into the avatar's hand and that he could throw along the ground, and it rolls along, uses the physics of the virtual world, and it lands and it gives me that random number. But that's really a difficult thing to do programmatically, and also the physics in the world wouldn't probably be up to that. But we don't need to do that kind of a literal translation. In fact, something like this, a floating die that floats up in the air, could in fact be more fun. So I'm just going to drag textures here that I previously found by doing a Google image search, and I got the 6 sides of a die. So the way a die works, you put the numbers on the opposite faces should add up to 7, I believe. So I'll put the 6 there, the 1 on top, and I guess we could put the 2 here. Just drag it onto the face you want to put it on, and so the 5 should go there, and then we're left with the 3 and the 4. So as I was saying, this die, I'm not going to roll along the ground. I'm going to make it a magic floating die that just stays up there in midair, and when I click on it, it rolls in midair. So again, maybe that's something that is more like a Super Mario game, where things aren't literal translations. So the first thing is, when I'm touched, that's how I'm going to start this program. When I touch the die, I want it to roll. So the first thing is to get the motion category here. Now, I want it to roll in 3 dimensions. Previously we've seen the turn command, which in a sense is a roll. It's a turn in 1 dimension, and I think that's the z-axis. And I'm going to turn it by more than 15 degrees here. I'm going to turn it by 60 degrees. And then to turn or to roll it in the other 2 dimensions, we've got roll and pitch. So you've heard this kind of terminology used for aeroplanes. I think they talk about pitch and roll and yaw for for turning along the different axes. So I'm going to turn it along the 3 axes. Now I'm just going to pull that down there, because what I want to do is, instead of just doing that once to turn it 60 degrees along each of those axes, I want to do it a few times. So I'm going to repeat that, and I'd say, let's leave it there. I want to repeat it 6 times, for instance, so it's easy to see this movement happening. Now, before I actually get the die to turn after touching it, I want it to make a sound. I want it to play the sound that I create myself, and that sound is, I'm going to call it shuffle, because you'll hear the sound that I got excuse me, off the internet, again by searching for a free WAV file. So these sounds have to be WAV format, W-A-V, and I'll show you that in a second. I got one that sounded quite good. It was called shuffle. So when I'm touched, I want to play the shuffle sound. You can hear the die rolling, and then actually roll it. And then the last thing, after it stops rolling, I want to give me the number between 1 and 6. So I can go on to the numbers category here, and there's a very useful item here called pick random number, and by default between 1 and 10. I'm going to make it between 1 and 6. Obviously there's only 6 faces on the die. And then how do I make it do that? Well, I have to go to the say command. So in looks we have say, and say is just that the object can say something to me. It can chat to me like another avatar could chat to me. So I'm going to say, put say there, and I'm going to put the random number that it comes up with into the say, into what it actually says to me. So after it stops rolling, it's going to say some random number between 1 and 6 to me on the chat line so that I can see it. Alright, I guess that's the most of my program done. Let's go and copy that now. Copy the Linden script. Go back to the virtual world. I still have this in edit mode here. So I can go on to the content tab, say new script. Again, highlight all that, delete it, and paste in my code. Now you'll see here when I run this, even though the compile is successful, you'll see that there is a problem with this, and you'll see in a second what that is. Now if I click on my die, it rolls, but you see this, oops, my inventory does not contain the sound shuffle. So the primitive, the object, tells me that, and it does actually come up with the random number between 1 and 6, which is 3. But we have a problem because the program has realized that it doesn't contain the sound shuffle that I told it to play in the program. So what I've got to do is to add that sound to the object. So go back to inventory, and you'll see there's a folder there called sounds, and there's nothing in it because there's no white triangle. I can't open it like I can the other ones. So I've got to add this sound that I want the die to play when I roll it. So I go to File, Upload, and there's one here called Upload Sound. I click on that, and I go to my folder, and I'll see that there's one in here called Shuffle. That's the sound that I want to play. So I can upload that for free. Excuse me. And now there's an option here to play it in world. And can you hear that? It's quite a low sound, but you can hear it's just a very quick kind of a shuffling sound, probably more appropriate for a deck of cards, but it's good enough for what I want to achieve. So that sound is now there. If I go back into edit mode, the way I can attach this sound to this object such that the program can now find it is I have to drag it out of my inventory and place it in to the script section of the object. So that's the program there, and when it's running, it can look in this area for objects that it's being that it's trying to use in the program, and it will now find that sound that it was looking for called shuffle. But I want to do one other thing here before I run the program again. You'll see, or you'll remember, that when the program was telling me things down here, it said primitive says something, because that's the name, the default name of this object. But I want to give this object a different name. I want to say die or dice. I know the proper word is, of course, die here, but I think most people would say dice. So I'm going to say dice rolls. I'm going to give that as the name excuse me, for this object. And I'll close that now. I'll close my inventory. Just move around a little here, and we'll see now when we click on this die, you hear the shuffling sound, it rolls in every dimension, and finally it picks a random number between 1 and 6, and it tells me dice rolls, because that now is the name of the object. It's like the dice rolls is chatting to me, and it says 3, because we said to give it a command to say something, and it says the random number that it picks. Now the previous time we did this you saw 3 as well, so let's just prove that it's not always picking 3. The random number does change. Now dice rolls 2. And in case you can't hear the sound very loudly there, if I walk up closer to the die, I should hopefully hear it better when it shuffles this time. So listen now. And you can hear that shuffle sound. The die rolls in every dimension, and it picks 3 again. It seems to like picking 3. Let's do it again and see if we can get something besides 3 or 2. There we get 1. We get 3 again. That's a bit unusual, isn't it? 1. 5. At long last we get something besides 3 and 1. Okay, so it does work. It's just, of course, being a random number, it can coincidentally be the same thing a number of times. But I guess, the important point about this tutorial is just to understand that you don't need to do literal translations of things. I don't need to roll that die on the ground to make it an effective or a fun way of interacting with the virtual world. In fact, it's probably more fun to have it up there in a kind of a Super Mario type of way, something that's floating and it's bigger, it's larger than life, and it's very obvious that it's something that I can interact with, click on, and make it do something. So it rolls 2.